Chapter 1. Master and Apprentice. Amsterdam. Date unknown. The young artist hunched over his work table. The silence pressed in, broken only by the rasp of a knife against reed. Shavings curled to the floor, mingling with ink-stained scraps and discarded sketches. He lifted the reed, tilting it toward the light. A narrow shaft of afternoon sun sliced through the stale air, filtering through the lone window. For 10 years, that window had framed the same view, a square of sky, the distant gabled rooftops. Unchanging, satisfied with the reed's point, he set the blade aside. His fingers lingered, then slowly he turned to the mirror propped against the wall. He exhaled, fogging the tarnished glass, wiped it clean with his sleeve. His reflection stared back, clear, vivid, youthful. His hand brushed his jaw, searching for something, anything. A wrinkle, a shadow, a mark of time. Yet there was nothing. 10 years ago, it had been a gift, a blessing even. Now, it felt like a curse. He dipped the reed into black ink, a small half shell, dried and crusted at the edges. The strokes came fast, impatient, lines racing across parchment. Bit by bit, his face emerged from a patchwork of hatches and ink. The sharp cut of his jaw, the hollows beneath his eyes, the unruly fall of his hair. Scratch by quickened scratch. Then came a sudden tingle, a warning. It stirred in the scar on his right hand, faint at first, then building swiftly. A slow pulse beneath the skin, creeping down his fingers. He flexed his hand, rubbing the jagged lines urgently. But the sensation only grew, insistent and relentless. His strokes quickened. He didn't have much time. Footsteps echoed, faint but rising, climbing the stairs. A sharp click sounded at the lock. His hand froze mid-stroke, muscles locking painfully. The scar seared his flesh. A burning command he could not resist. The door creaked open a fraction, spilling a narrow wedge of light across the floor. A shadow fell across it, broad-shouldered and deliberate. Then the heavy oak door swung wider, and his master stepped through, a dark silhouette against the dim stairwell. Their eyes met. A slight nod. A subtle, satisfied smile. As quickly as it had come, the pain receded, his hand freed once more. But the scar still throbbed gently. A quiet, lingering threat beneath the surface. His master turned sharply toward the stairwell. Behind him came the wheeze of labored breath, and a second figure appeared, round, flushed, and clearly winded from the climb. The client, of course. The apprentice's gaze swept quickly over the man's portly silhouette. The stiff white ruff at his neck, the gleaming satin of his doublet. His master never revealed details beforehand, leaving him guessing who might step through the door next. Not that it mattered. Most were cut from the same cloth, traders and resellers, cloaked in wealth, but dull as the ledgers they kept. Occasionally, a rare few stood out. Scholars, inventors, writers. Their visits were fleeting gifts, glimpses into worlds beyond these walls, filled with new ideas and distant dreams. But not this man. This man reeked of trade and profit, a shallow well, offering little inspiration. The master moved swiftly, peeling the client's cloak from his shoulders before striding over to the apprentice. Without a glance, he plucked the half-finished self-portrait from the table. A brief examination, then a cold smirk. The apprentice's heart tightened, along with his jaw, as the sketch crumpled in the master's fist, discarded without a thought. "Allow me to present my lehrling," the master declared smoothly. "He will paint alongside me as he hones his craft. Rest assured, he shall remain completely silent during the creation of your portrait." The familiar script, a polished introduction and a thinly veiled warning, echoed once more. Towering over him, the master's presence loomed, heavy and oppressive, like the stern, ever-watchful portraits lining Amsterdam's finest halls. He lifted his hand, revealing a gold ring, etched with exotic, intricate patterns, beautiful in its craftsmanship. Instantly, the scar on the apprentice's hand stirred again, a faint flare, enough to catch his breath. A reminder. The apprentice swallowed hard and stepped reluctantly behind one of two easels at the center of the room, his fingers tightening around the paintbrush with resigned compliance. His gaze flicked sharply to his master, then to the ring, a reminder of who truly held control. Satisfied, the master turned back to the client, his expression softening into practiced warmth, a slow smile slipping into place like a mask. With exaggerated politeness, he gestured for the client to take his seat on a raised platform, positioned precisely between the two easels, each bearing a blank, freshly stretched canvas. Before sitting, the client's gaze wandered, lingering on paintings, draped costumes, scattered curiosities. A strange stillness hung in the air, as if the room itself were holding its breath. "I must say, you have quite the setup here," he finally remarked, lowering his large frame into the chair with a faint groan, pressing a hand to his knee. "I never would have expected something so elaborate hidden away in a sugar warehouse. But those stairs, good God, my knees may never forgive me." He chuckled, though a hint of irritation sharpened the edges of his voice. "Why not move downstairs? Make it easier on your clients." The master offered an easy grin, rolling up his sleeves as he took his place behind the easel. "More convenient for the client? Certainly. But for the artist?" He shook his head. "Upstairs has better light, fewer distractions. Downstairs, between the refinery stench and the noise, it's downright unbearable." The apprentice kept his expression carefully neutral. It was a lie, plain and bald-faced. The lighting was better, yes, but the real reason was the studio's isolation. Buried in the farthest corner of the warehouse, sealed behind a locked door. Still, as always, he said nothing. The master pivoted effortlessly, his voice shifting into the smooth cadence of a showman. With a grand sweep of his hand, he declared, "Now, good sir, we are ready to begin. If you would kindly tilt your head, just so. Yes, perfect." The client settled into his pose. The master loaded his brush with paint, then leaned in, lowering his voice to something almost conspiratorial. "Tell me," he murmured, "I'm not one to play the markets, but what's the outlook for this fall's nutmeg prices? Not one to play the markets? The apprentice tightened his grip on his brush. Another lie so familiar it barely pricked anymore. His master approached trading like he did his art. A performance, a game of manipulation. He took pride in prying secrets from unsuspecting clients, in using their own words to gain an advantage. And as always, the client took the bait. His voice filled the room, eager and self-important. As the two artists began their work, the master's movements were exaggerated, his brush strokes sweeping dramatically, each one a performance meant for the client's eyes. Meanwhile, the apprentice worked with quiet precision, his strokes deliberate and controlled, a stark contrast. After an hour, the client's monologue droned on, unbroken except for the occasional emphatic flourish. Then a subtle signal. The apprentice coughed into his fist. The master caught it. "That will be all for today, good sir," he announced, interrupting the client mid-sentence with a practiced smile. He stepped back with a flourish. "Allow me to escort you downstairs." The client hesitated, a flicker of disappointment. "Well, may I at least see the painting?" He began to rise. The master was already moving, a hand on the client's back, gently steering him away before he could turn. "Patience, my dear fellow. The real magic happens in the final strokes, which I prefer to apply in solitude." The door closed behind them with a definitive click. Alone again, the apprentice exhaled. Returning to his canvas, he worked in silence, refining the details, perfecting each stroke. When he stepped back, he glanced at the clock. 1 hour and 7 minutes, a new record, a small victory. But the satisfaction was brief. He placed the portrait alongside others, leaning against the wall, each a testament to his talent and labor. Each waited for the final touch, a signature. But not his signature. No, theirs would bear the name of Amsterdam's most celebrated artist. His master's. The apprentice turned to the master's canvas, a mess of aimless, thoughtless strokes. Empty. Scoffing under his breath, he picked up a wide brush and swept a coat of gesso across the surface, methodically erasing the facade. "You could at least try," he muttered, gripping the brush tighter. His knuckles whitened around the handle, but he forced his hand steady. As he finished, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A bird, tiny, bright-plumed, perched on the thin branch just outside his window. It shifted, talons gripping the bark, tentative and skittish. The branch squeaked softly against the glass. The same bird from a few days ago. Last time, it had flown off before he could grab his paints. Moving slowly, he reached for his palette and brush, careful not to startle it. He dipped his brush into a dab of brown. Then a blur of wings. It was gone. The branch trembled in its wake, mocking his frustration. He let out a slow breath, peering out the window in search of another subject. But the sky beyond was colorless, flat, a dreary expanse of nothing. Unwilling to let the moment slip away entirely, he turned inward to the one image that never failed him. His eyes slipped shut, and from the depths of his mind she emerged. She always did. The girl, the enigmatic presence that haunted his dreams, always waiting, always watching. His brush shifted to his left hand, a habit he never questioned. Perhaps it was unconscious defiance, a quiet rebellion against the scar on his right. and the ring on his master's finger. The master loathed when he painted her. He had seen the fury in his eyes, the clenched jaw, the subtle tightening of his fists. Just the sight of her likeness seemed to unravel something in him. That was reason enough to keep painting. Stroke by stroke, she came to life, as she always had. The curve of her jaw, the soft shadows beneath her eyes, the way the light caught her hair. Every line, every hue, every delicate contour, an exact copy of the portrait that preceded it. But today, something was different. Her eyes, a quiet insistence layered beneath the familiar, haunting gaze, a pull, a whisper of urgency, as if she were trying to tell him something. His pulse quickened. He worked faster now, his brush moving in a fevered rush. He had to finish, because when dawn came, she would be gone, leaving only a blank canvas and the ache of her absence.